The great chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the darkness of space, attached to a station so old that nobody remembered who had built it. 12 species had ruled this part of the galaxy for 50,000 years, and in all that time, the chamber had never changed. The same cold lights hung from the ceiling. The same stone seats formed a circle around the speaking floor. The same silence filled the air whenever a new species was called to answer. Carter stood on that speaking floor now, feeling very small. She was 53 years old, a former schoolteacher from a small town in Ohio, and she had never expected to end up here. But the United Nations had chosen her as humanity's first ambassador to the stars, and she had accepted the job because someone had to do it. The council members sat above her in their ancient seats. Some of them looked almost human. Others did not look like anything she had ever seen before. They were tall and thin, with bodies like insects and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They were covered in thick fur and had faces that reminded her of bears, if bears could talk and build starships. They were made of living stone, and they moved so slowly that she sometimes forgot they were alive at all. At the center of them all sat High Speaker. He was a being of pure crystal, and when he spoke, his whole body rang like a bell. He had led the council for 3,000 years, and he had seen hundreds of species stand where was standing now. None of them had ever surprised him. "Humanity," said, and his voice filled the chamber like music. "You have reached the stars. You have built ships that cross the void between worlds. You have proven that you are more than animals. For this, the council welcomes you." Said nothing. Admiral Brooks stood behind her, his face hard and unreadable. Doctor stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly together. They had all been told what was coming. "But the stars are not free," continued. "The galaxy is old, and those who came before you have paid the price of their advancement. Now it is your turn. This is the way it has always been. This is the way it will always be." A smaller alien stepped forward, carrying a scroll made of some material that glowed faintly in the dim light. The alien began to read, and listened to every word. The tribute demand was simple in its cruelty. Humanity would give 40% of all minerals mined from their worlds to the Council. They would give 20% of all food grown on their farms. They would send 1 million of their people every year to work in Council space, doing whatever jobs the older species did not want to do. In exchange, humanity would receive protection. The Council would make sure that no other power attacked human worlds. The Council would share some of their technology, the parts that were not too dangerous for young species to have. The Council would allow humanity to exist. The reading took almost an hour. Stood through all of it, her feet aching and her back growing stiff. But she did not move. She did not show any weakness. Her father had taught her that when she was young. "Never let them see you sweat," he used to say. "Never let them think they have beaten you." When the reading finally ended, leaned forward in his seat. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the floor. "This is the tribute demand," he said. "Every species that has joined the galactic community has accepted these terms. They accepted them 12,000 years ago. They accepted them 9,000 years ago. Even the mighty who once ruled 100 worlds accepted them when their time came. Now humanity must give its answer." Looked up at the council. She saw boredom in some of their faces. They had done this so many times that it meant nothing to them anymore. They expected her to cry, perhaps, or to beg for mercy, or to try to negotiate better terms. That was what young species always did. She turned to Admiral Brooks. He gave her a small nod. She turned to Doctor, who closed her eyes and nodded as well. They had discussed this moment for months. They had argued about it in secret meetings on Earth. They had run simulations and studied history and talked to every expert they could find. In the end, the decision had been simple. Stepped forward until she stood directly below High Speaker. She was a small woman, and he was an ancient being of crystal and light, but she met his gaze without fear. "Humanity has heard the tribute demand," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We have considered it carefully. We understand what you are asking for and what you are offering in return." She paused. The chamber was completely silent. Even the, who usually took hours to react to anything, had turned their stone faces toward her. "Our answer is no." For a long moment, nothing happened, then made a sound that might have been confusion or might have been something else entirely. "I do not understand," he said. "Perhaps the translation has failed. Please repeat your answer." "There is no translation error," said. "Humanity refuses the tribute demand. We will not give you our minerals. We will not give you our food. We will not give you our people. The answer is no." The chamber erupted into chaos. They were clicking and buzzing in their own language. They were growling and stamping their feet. Even the stone were moving faster than had ever seen them move before. But she did not step back. She did not apologize. She did not try to explain. Admiral Brooks moved to stand beside her, his hand resting on the ceremonial sword at his hip. Doctor joined them, her chin raised high. They were three humans standing alone against the rulers of the galaxy, and they were not afraid. High Speaker raised one crystalline hand, and slowly the chamber fell silent again. "In 50,000 years," he said, "no species has ever refused the tribute demand. Not once. Do you understand what you are doing? Do you understand what this means?" Carter looked at him and smiled. It was the same smile she had used on difficult students, the ones who thought they could push her around because she was small and soft-spoken. It was a smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "We understand perfectly," she said, "but our answer will not change. The answer is no. It will always be no." She turned and walked toward the exit, her advisors following close behind. The council members watched them go in stunned silence. They had no words for what had just happened. They had no protocol for it. In 50,000 years, they had never needed one. Humanity had said no, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every species with access to the communication networks heard the story within hours. The young species called humanity had refused the tribute demand. They had said no. Nobody could believe it. On the council station, High Speaker called an emergency meeting. The 12-member species gathered in a smaller chamber, away from the ceremonial hall where the impossible had just happened. They spoke in hushed voices, as if they were afraid that someone might be listening. "There must be a misunderstanding," said Counselor of the. She was the most skilled diplomat in galactic history, and she had talked hundreds of species into accepting terms they did not want. Her voice was soft and sweet, like honey poured over glass. "Perhaps the humans do not understand what tribute means. Perhaps they think we are asking for something else." "They understood," growled General of the. He was a massive creature, covered in brown fur and scars from 100 battles. "I watched their faces. They knew exactly what they were doing." "Then they are insane," said another voice. "No sane species would refuse the council." Listen to them argue for nearly an hour. Finally, he raised his hand and silence fell. "We will send Counselor to speak with them again," he said. "She will explain the situation more clearly. She will help them understand the mistake they have made. Once they see reason, they will accept the tribute like everyone else." Bowed her head in acceptance. She had never failed to convince a species before. She did not intend to start now. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Maria Santos stood before the United Nations General Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every nation, and cameras broadcast her words to billions of people around the world. "My fellow humans," she said, "you have heard what happened on the council station. Our ambassador, Carter, refused the tribute demand on behalf of all humanity. Some of you may be wondering why. Some of you may be afraid of what comes next. I am here to tell you the truth." She pressed a button and images appeared on the screens behind her. They showed planets that had once been green and full of life. Now they were brown and dead, stripped of everything valuable. They showed species that had once been proud and strong. Now they were shadows of themselves, working as servants for the council races. "This is what tribute means," President Santos said. "This is what happens to species that accept the council's offer. They are not protected. They are consumed. Slowly, over centuries, they are drained of everything that makes them strong until there is nothing left." The chamber was silent. The representatives stared at the images, their faces pale with horror. "Our intelligence services have been studying the council for years," the president continued. "We know the truth that they try to hide. In 50,000 years, not one tribute species has ever become a full member of the council. Not one has ever grown strong enough to stand as an equal. They all fade away in the end, forgotten and alone." She paused and looked directly into the cameras. "That will not be humanity's fate. We did not survive ice ages and plagues and world wars just to become slaves to creatures who see us as nothing more than resources to be harvested. We said no, and we meant it." Across the galaxy, on a neutral station far from both Council and human space, Counselor met with the human delegation. She had prepared for this meeting for days, practicing every technique she knew. She was confident that she could make them see reason. Ambassador Carter sat across from her, flanked by Admiral Brooks and Colonel Daniel. They listened politely as explained the benefits of tribute. She spoke of protection and technology and the honor of being part of the galactic community. She spoke of the dangers that awaited species who tried to stand alone. "You are young," said, her voice gentle and understanding. "You do not know how dangerous the galaxy can be. There are things out there in the darkness that would destroy you without a second thought. The Council can protect you from those things, but only if you accept your place in the order of things." Nodded slowly, as if she was considering the words carefully. Then she leaned forward. "Counselor," she said, "I have a question for you. In all the time that the Council has existed, has any tribute species ever become a full member? Has any of them ever been treated as equals?" Opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Her mirror-like eyes flickered with something that might have been confusion. "The path to membership is long," she said finally. "It requires centuries of service and proof of worthiness." "But has it ever happened?" Colonel asked. His voice was hard and flat, the voice of a man who had seen too many battles to be fooled by pretty words. "In 50,000 years has even one species made that journey?" Did not answer. She could not answer because the truth was obvious. No tribute species had ever risen to equality. None ever would. That was not how the system was designed to work. Stood up from the table. Admiral Brooks and Colonel rose with her. "Thank you for your time," Counselor said. "We understand the situation now better than ever, but our answer has not changed. It will never change." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "Humanity will not pay tribute. We will not bow to species who see us as nothing more than food to be eaten slowly. If the Council wants to take what is ours, they will have to come and get it. And I promise you, Counselor, they will find that humans are not easy prey." The door closed behind them, leaving alone in the meeting room. For the first time in her long career, she did not know what to say. She did not know what to do. She had never met a species like this before. None of them had. Back on Earth, people gathered in the streets to watch the news. They saw their ambassador walking away from the most powerful diplomat in the galaxy. They heard her words, calm and certain and unafraid, and something stirred in their hearts, something old and fierce and human. They had been told that the galaxy was ruled by ancient powers that could crush them like insects. They had been told that resistance was impossible, but their leaders had looked those powers in the eye and said no. For the first time since humanity reached the stars, they felt like they belonged there, not as servants or tribute payers, but as a species that would bow to no one. The Council had demanded tribute, and humanity had refused. Now the whole galaxy was watching to see what would happen next. The hegemony fleet assembled at the edge of human space like a storm gathering on the horizon. 8,000 warships from 12 species formed a wall of metal and fire that stretched across the darkness between stars. Nothing like it had been seen in 3,000 years. Nothing like it had ever been needed. Admiral, brother to the High Speaker, stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the tactical display. The human colonies were marked in blue, scattered across a small corner of the galaxy like drops of water on a vast desert. They were so few, so fragile, so easy to crush. He opened a communication channel that would reach every human world at the same time. His crystal face appeared on screens from Earth to the farthest mining station, and his voice echoed through homes and ships and government buildings across human space. "People of Earth," he said, "you have been given a great gift. The Council offered you protection and partnership, and you threw it back in our faces. This was a mistake. You have 30 standard days to reconsider your answer. If you do not accept the tribute demand by then, this fleet will move forward. We will take what we asked for, and we will take much more besides. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The transmission ended, and silence fell across human space. In Geneva, the leaders of humanity gathered to discuss their options. Presidents and prime ministers and generals sat around a long table, their faces grim and tired. They had all seen the size of the enemy fleet. They all knew what it meant. "We cannot win a straight fight," said General Torres, commander of Earth's orbital defenses. "Our entire navy has less than 300 ships. Even if every single one of them fought perfectly, we would be outnumbered more than 20 to 1. "Then perhaps we should reconsider our position," said another voice. It belonged to a diplomat from one of the smaller nations, a man who had never believed in the refusal from the beginning. "Pride is not worth extinction. We can accept the tribute and survive." "For how long?" President Santos asked. She turned to look at him with eyes that burned with cold fire. "You saw the evidence. Tribute species do not survive. They fade away over centuries until there is nothing left. Would you trade a quick death for a slow one?" The diplomat fell silent. He had no answer. Admiral Brooks stood up from his chair. He was an older man with gray hair and a face marked by decades of service, but his voice was strong and clear. "The situation is not as hopeless as it appears," he said. "Yes, we are outnumbered. Yes, we are, but we have advantages that the Council does not understand." He walked to a screen and pulled up images of human warships. They were smaller than the Council vessels, sleeker and faster, with designs that looked nothing like the ancient templates the older species had used for. "Our ships were built without Council technology," he said. "We had to figure everything out for ourselves from scratch. That means we made our own choices about weapons and armor and engines. The Council has never seen ships like ours. They do not know what we can do." He changed the image to show something else. It was a map of human history, marked with the locations of famous battles. Some of them were victories against impossible odds. Others were defeats that had somehow become the seeds of eventual triumph. "More importantly," he continued, "we know how to fight. Humans have been at war with each other since before we learned to write. We have spent our entire history developing new ways to kill each other. It is not something we are proud of, but it is something we are very good at. The Council species gave up war thousands of years ago. They have forgotten what it really means." The room was quiet as the leaders absorbed his words. Some of them looked skeptical, others looked thoughtful, a few looked almost hopeful. "What are you suggesting?" President Santos asked. "I am suggesting that we do not surrender," Admiral Brooks said. "I am suggesting that we prepare for war, a real war, the kind that humans have been fighting since the beginning of time. We may not win. We may all die. But we will make them pay such a price that no species will ever demand tribute from another again." Ambassador Carter arrived at the meeting just as the debate reached its peak. She had been traveling back from the neutral station, and she looked tired but determined. "I have a message for the Council," she said. "I would like to broadcast it to the entire galaxy." President Santos nodded. "Do it." Stood before the cameras and took a deep breath. Behind her, the leaders of humanity watched in silence. Across human space, billions of people gathered around their screens to listen. And somewhere out in the darkness, 8,000 enemy ships waited to see if their prey would finally break. Admiral said, "You have shown us your fleet. You have told us what you will do if we do not submit. You believe that the size of your armada will frighten us into obedience. You are wrong." She paused and looked directly into the camera, as if she could see through it to the Crystal Admiral on the other side. Humanity did not reach the stars by being easily frightened. We came from a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We survived ice ages that froze half our planet. We survived plagues that killed more than half our people. We survived wars that burned our cities and poisoned our lands. And every single time, we came back stronger than before. Her voice grew harder, colder, more certain. "If you attack us, you will face the kind of war that humans have spent their entire history perfecting. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. We will fight until there is nothing left of us to fight with, and we will make sure that you remember the cost for the rest of your long, long lives." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to burn with an ancient fire. "Our answer has not changed. It will never change. The answer is no. And if you want to change it, you are welcome to try. But I promise you this, you will regret it." The transmission ended. On the council station, the member species watched the replay in stunned silence. They had expected fear. They had expected begging. They had expected anything except what they had just seen. For the first time in 3,000 years, they were not sure they would win. The council did something strange. Instead of attacking immediately, they sent observers into human space. The official reason was to assess military capabilities and find weaknesses. The real reason was something they would never admit to themselves. They were curious. They wanted to understand how such a small, young species had found the courage to defy the rulers of the galaxy. Scholar of the led the observation team. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species, with fur that had turned white around his muzzle and eyes that had seen more than most beings could imagine. He had spent his life studying civilizations, watching them rise and fall across thousands of years. He thought he knew everything there was to know about how species behaved. He was wrong. The human government allowed the observers to travel freely through their space. They could visit any world, any station, any ship. They could talk to anyone they wanted. President Santos said it was a gesture of openness. Admiral Brooks said it was a calculated risk. Ambassador Carter just smiled and said that humans had nothing to hide. Began his observations on Earth itself, the of this strange species. He walked through their cities and watched them go about their daily lives. He visited their museums and libraries. He studied their art and their music and their literature. And slowly, he began to understand why the council was afraid. The humans had a concept that his people had abandoned long ago. They called it defiance. It was the idea that you could stand against a stronger enemy and refuse to submit, even if it meant your own destruction. It was woven into everything they did. Their stories celebrated heroes who fought against impossible odds. Their history was filled with moments when smaller forces had defeated larger ones through sheer determination and willingness to sacrifice. "You glorify defeat," said to Doctor during one of their many conversations. "You have songs about battles you lost. You build monuments to soldiers who died in hopeless causes. My people would consider this madness." Smiled at him. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but had learned that kindness did not mean weakness among humans. "We do not glorify defeat," she said. "We glorify the refusal to accept defeat. There is a difference. A warrior who loses a battle accepts his fate and moves on. A human who loses a battle starts planning how to win the next one. We do not know how to give up. It is simply not in our nature. Thought about this for a long time. He visited more human worlds and spoke to more human people. He met soldiers who had lost limbs in training accidents and returned to duty anyway. He met scientists who had failed 1,000 times before succeeding once. He met ordinary people who had survived tragedies that would have broken members of his own species and somehow found the strength to keep living. And everywhere he went, he heard the same word repeated over and over again. No, it had become more than just an answer to the council. It had become a symbol, a rallying cry, a promise that humans made to themselves and each other. We will not submit. We will not bow. We will not break. Back on his ship, wrote his report to the council. His hands trembled as he typed the words, because he knew that they would not want to hear what he had to say. The humans are not insane, he wrote. They are not foolish. They understand the odds against them better than we do, but they have decided that survival without freedom is not worth having. They would rather die fighting than live as servants. This is not a negotiating position. This is who they are. He paused and looked out the window at the blue and green world below. Earth was beautiful, he realized. It was full of life and energy and chaos. It was nothing like the orderly, quiet worlds of the council species. It was alive in a way that he had almost forgotten worlds could be. I believe they can hurt us, he continued. I believe that if we attack them, they will fight with everything they have. They will not stop when the battle turns against them. They will not surrender when their ships are destroyed. They will keep fighting until there is nothing left. And even then, they will find new ways to resist. This is a species that learned to split the atom and then immediately used it to destroy 2 of their own cities. They are capable of anything. He sent the report and waited for a response. It came faster than he expected. The council was divided. Some members wanted to attack immediately, before the humans could grow any stronger. Others wanted to withdraw and pretend that none of this had ever happened. A few, like Counselor, suggested trying diplomacy one more time. But something else was happening that none of them had expected. Other species were watching the standoff, the ones who paid tribute and served the council and had long since forgotten what freedom felt like. They saw the human ambassador say no. They saw the human fleet prepare to fight against impossible odds. They heard the human president speak of survival and defiance and the refusal to accept an unjust fate. And for the first time in centuries, they began to wonder if they had made a mistake. Secret messages started reaching Earth. They came from tribute worlds and servant species, hidden in coded transmissions that the Council could not detect. Some of them contained offers of help. Others contained intelligence about Council weaknesses. All of them contained the same question: how did you find the courage to refuse? Ambassador Carter read each message carefully. She understood what they meant. Humanity's defiance had started something larger than anyone had imagined. The old order was beginning to crack. She called a meeting with President Santos and Admiral Brooks and showed them the messages. "We are not alone," she said. "We thought we were standing against the galaxy by ourselves, but we were wrong. There are others out there who feel the same way we do. They were just waiting for someone to go first." Admiral Brooks studied the intelligence reports with growing interest. Some of these contain information about the Council fleet, patrol schedules, communication codes, supply routes. If this is accurate, it changes everything. "It is accurate," said. "The species who sent it are risking everything to help us. They believe in what we are doing. They believe that if we succeed, it will change the galaxy forever." President Santos was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Then we cannot fail," she said. "Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who is counting on us. We have to show the galaxy that it is possible to say no and survive." Outside the window, the stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, the Council fleet waited. Somewhere out there, Millions of beings watched and hoped and prayed for a future they had never dared to imagine. Humanity had said no, and the word was spreading. The galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber was in chaos. High Speaker had called an emergency session, and the 12 member species were arguing with a fury that had not been seen in thousands of years. The careful order that had ruled the galaxy for 50 was falling apart before their eyes. "We must attack now," roared General of the. His massive form trembled with rage as he pounded his fist against his speaking platform. "Every day we wait, the humans grow bolder. Every day we hesitate, more tribute species begin to question our authority. We must crush this rebellion before it spreads." "And what if we lose?" asked Counselor. Her voice was calm, but there was a new uncertainty in her mirror-like eyes. "Scholars' report suggests that the humans will not surrender. If we attack and fail to achieve a quick victory, we will look weak. That will encourage the rebellion more than anything else." "They are cowards," snarled. "You have always been cowards. This is why real warriors despise your kind." "Enough," said High Speaker. His crystal body rang with authority and silence fell across the chamber. "We are not here to fight each other. We are here to decide the fate of our civilization." He looked around at the assembled species, and for the first time in 3,000 years, he felt old. The weight of his long life pressed down on him like a mountain. "My brother commands the hegemony fleet," he said. "I have spoken with him. He says that several member species have begun withdrawing their ships. The left yesterday. They are preparing to leave today. Our coalition is falling apart." The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Accusations flew back and forth. Species that had worked together for suddenly remembered old grudges and ancient betrayals. The bonds that had held the council together were breaking, and everyone could feel it. On Earth, Ambassador Carter received an unexpected visitor. Scholar had resigned from the council's service and traveled to human space alone. He arrived at the diplomatic quarter in Geneva looking tired and old, his white fur matted and his eyes haunted by things he could not forget. "I could not be part of it anymore," he told. "The council speaks of order and protection, but I have seen the truth. I have seen the tribute worlds where species that were once proud and free now serve as little more than slaves. I have seen the slow death that awaits everyone who bows to the council's demands. I will not help them do the same thing to your people." Offered him a seat and a cup of something warm to drink. She had learned that kindness cost nothing and sometimes bought everything. "What is happening out there?" she asked. "We have heard rumors, but we do not know what to believe." Wrapped his large hands around the cup and stared into the steam that rose from its surface. "The galaxy is changing," he said. "Your word, your single word of refusal, has done what 50,000 years of council rule could not. It has given people hope. Across hundreds of worlds, beings who had accepted their fate are now beginning to question it. They whisper your name in the dark. They draw your symbol on walls where the authorities cannot see. They tell stories about the small species that dared to say no." He looked up at her with eyes that held both sadness and something that might have been hope. "The council is afraid," he said. "Not of your ships or your weapons, but of what you represent. They built their power on the belief that resistance is impossible. You have proven that belief wrong. That is something they cannot fight with fleets or armies." 3 days later, a message arrived from the council station. It was not a demand or a threat. It was an invitation. High Speaker himself wished to speak with the human delegation. He proposed a meeting at the neutral station where Counselor had once tried to convince humanity to submit. President Santos called her advisors together to discuss the invitation. Admiral Brooks was suspicious. Colonel thought it was a trap. Doctor believed it was a sign of weakness. Ambassador Carter listened to all of them, then spoke. "I will go," she said. "Whatever they want, we need to hear it, and they need to see that we are not afraid to face them." She traveled to the neutral station with a small delegation, just as she had done before. But this time, everything was different. The council representatives who greeted her were quiet and subdued. The arrogance that had filled the chamber during the tribute demand was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. High Speaker waited for her in a private room. He was alone, without guards or advisors. His crystal body seemed dimmer than before, as if some inner light had faded. "Ambassador Carter," he said, "thank you for coming." "High Speaker," she replied, "I am here to listen." Was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and tired. "In 50,000 years, no species has ever refused the tribute demand," he said. "We built our entire civilization on the assumption that none ever would. Your refusal has broken something that we did not know could be broken. The coalition is falling apart. The tribute species are growing restless. Everything we built is crumbling, and we do not know how to stop it." He turned to face her directly. "We are here to offer you something new. Not tribute but trade. Not submission but partnership. We want humanity to join the council not as servants but as equals." Felt her heart racing, but she kept her face calm. This was what they had hoped for, what they had fought for, what they had risked everything to achieve. But she did not rush to accept. "Why?" she asked. "Why now? Why us?" Made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Because you showed us something we had forgotten," he said. "You showed us that strength is not just about ships and weapons. It is about the willingness to stand for what you believe in, even when the cost is everything. We have not seen that kind of strength in a very long time. Perhaps we need to learn it again." Considered his words carefully. She thought about all the people who had supported humanity's defiance, about the tribute species who had sent secret messages of hope, about the future that now seemed possible for the first time. She thought about her father, who had taught her to never let them see her sweat. She thought about the students she had taught, who had grown up in a world where humans were just beginning to reach the stars. She thought about everyone who had ever been told that their only choice was to submit. "I will take your offer to my government," she said. "But I must warn you, we will not accept anything that compromises our freedom or our dignity. If partnership means becoming what the tribute species became, then our answer will still be no." Nodded slowly. "I understand," he said. "I expected nothing less." 1 week later, Ambassador Carter stood before the United Nations to announce the new agreement. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as full partners, with all the rights and responsibilities that position required. The old tribute system would be reformed. The Council would begin the long process of making amends to the species they had wronged. It was not a perfect ending. There was still much work to do, many wounds to heal, many wrongs to right, but it was a beginning. President Santos asked to say a few words to mark the occasion. She walked to the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives, at the cameras that carried her image across the world, at the future that humanity had won for itself. "They asked us for tribute," she said. "They asked us to surrender our freedom in exchange for protection we did not need. They thought we would say yes, because everyone had always said yes before." She smiled, and it was the same smile she had given High Speaker on that first day in the council chamber. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "But we said no, and that one word changed everything." The chamber erupted in cheers. Across the world, people celebrated in the streets, and somewhere out in the distant stars, countless beings looked up at the night sky and dared to dream of freedom. Humanity had said no, and then, when the time was right, they had said yes. Both answers had changed the galaxy. Both answers had been exactly right. The old order was over. A new one had begun.